Good morning, everyone. My name is Allegra Cooper, and I will be here to share with you the shift left strategy that we use at Vanguard in order to deliver high-quality products to our clients. So I've currently been at Vanguard for about 6 years, and within that time, I've had a lot of experience with working with development teams that are delivering products to our external clients, as well as now on a support team where our clients are basically internal to Vanguard, and we're basically bringing in tools and finding solutions for the project team so that they can be successful with their continuous delivery. I have a background in math and computer science, and in my free time I love movies and I love traveling. So I'm really excited to even be here today to share with you the journey that Vanguard has gone through so far. Before I continue, I want to get a little poll of the room. I want to know how many people in here are non-technical. If you are like your product owners, your BSAs, okay, a couple of people. Who in here is technical? Everybody in here? Mostly technical. Okay, cool. Who is working at a company and working towards continuous delivery, right? Okay, and have you heard of shift left? Who's heard of shift left? Some people. Okay. Cool. What about Vanguard? Anybody familiar with Vanguard? Most of the time when I mention Vanguard, everybody tells me that they have investments in Vanguard. So we're financial services. Then the next question is, can you help me with your investments? I can't help you with your investments. I'm not here to give you any financial advice. That's not why I'm here. So we have a lot of IT teams, a whole lot of divisions that support our different business lines. And our whole entire company is online. So if you are a client of ours, you're probably using our products either through our website or our apps. So it's very important that our website has no downtime and no defects, or else we'll lose our clients. So the team that I'm on is the Testing Center of Excellence, and that's under our Chief Technology Office. That's one of the 10 subdivisions, and we support most of the project teams that are doing the delivery, which is about 6 different divisions out of the 10 divisions. So our Agile Journey. Some of you may have gone through this or are familiar with it. We started off with waterfall, our whole waterfall process, and we weren't doing a lot of testing until our product was already basically done. So we're doing a lot of the testing at the end. Our releases, we probably did about 3 or 4 releases a year. And this wasn't going to work with us trying to roll out more products to our clients. So we had to move into Agile, but we didn't fully move into Agile. We had a mix of waterfall and Agile still. And in that case, we didn't actually move our people. We didn't change the way people were working together. So we also went into a team reorg. So our developers had their own managers, BSAs had their own managers, and also the testers and business, everybody was so segregated. So we redid the whole org. Everybody was under the same project manager. And then we went into shift left. And we also moved our teams closer together. So we integrated the whole team to the same location. And then we got into continuous delivery, continuous integration. We went into a whole product-centric model, product ownership. Everyone in our organization got excited. They read books about lean startup. They read the Phoenix Project, how Google tests software. So everybody was excited about moving towards continuous delivery. And then we went into BVAS, which is our business value at startup speed, which is where we are today. So what does it mean to shift left? From people who aren't familiar with the term, as I said, we started off in waterfall. We found out that we were spending a lot of money and time when we found defects later on in our development process and within production. It cost us a whole lot of money and time to fix defects when they were there. So what we wanted to do was shift our testing left. We wanted to start testing earlier on in our development process so that it was cheaper and faster to fix these problems before they even become defects. Therefore, we wanted to test earlier, often, and faster. We had to work on our continuous delivery, and we wanted quality in our continuous delivery. Some of these things we're doing very good at, but some things we're still working on. Single source of truth, as we first talked about earlier, is that everyone has their own different documentation. The BSAs were writing in Word docs. The testers had their Excel sheets. Then the developer had their code. So what is the single source of truth? If a defect happens or something needs to change, who makes the change? Where does the change happen? Does all these things keep up? They don't. So we needed to determine the single source of truth, and when it comes down to it, it's the code. We wanted an on-demand prod-like environment. So these are still things that we're still working towards. Shifting right. How can we test more in our prod environment? And then we're moving towards microservices. So each team needs also ownership of their own data. So our organization as a whole came up with these initiatives. We wanted to decrease our testing cycle time, increase our speed to market, and decrease our costs and increase quality. So these are the 4 initiatives that our whole IT organization developed. So who's going to help with this? Some of you may have heard of a testing center of excellence, and you might be against it. Oh, we've heard that they're horrible. Don't have a testing center of excellence. They're the people that own all the tests. You give them all to them. They'll own it. They'll maintain it. They create the test. That's what they do. That's not what we do. We do not do that. We don't own your tests. What we are is a group of people that are very passionate about continuous delivery and software design and quality. And we've just been selected to help the enterprise change the way they build and maintain the software. So we're more of a guidance, we're more of a coach. We give best practices and advice to teams that need help and make sure they're on the right path. The Testing Center of Excellence had 3 components. We had the regression and automation services. They worked more hands-on with the teams in different divisions, giving them guidance on how to maintain lower level tests. They also looked into their manual testing suite, determined which kind of tests they didn't need, which ones they should get rid of, which ones should be automated, looked at their end-to-end test, and also helped them move their end-to-end test to a lower level. Then we have our performance engineering services that also help teams shift left on performance. Can you test your performance earlier? Can you build your performance testing into your build pipeline? And then the team that I was on, the shift left and test transformation. So what we did with the teams was we selected 13 teams to try out shift left. We helped them with measure and collect their feedback, helped them with their model, made sure that they were on track, and gave them the right skills and infrastructure to be successful. Then we finalized this model and rolled it out across all of IT. So how did our software evolve? We had to make changes in 3 different areas. One being the people, where it was a complete culture change. We actually created 2 new roles. One of them is the product test engineer. They worked very closely with the product owner. And then the automation engineer. They worked very closely with the developer. I would say that role is more like a developer in training. We didn't roll it out that way at first, but that's the way we should have rolled it out. You're sitting very closely with the developer, you're doing pair programming, you're learning what they're doing, because when the product first starts, there is no end-to-end test. You are learning what the developer is doing, and you're making sure you're not reworking and duplicating the efforts. Why is the developer testing at the lower level and then the SAT tester testing again at the UI? We didn't want people doing that, and that's exactly what was happening when we first rolled out the role. So we wanted to make sure people were doing role sharing, cross-functional teams. We changed from an assembly line to the product ownership. People have more value in their code when they know that they're going to own it forever. Right? Some people are just like, well, I'm about to move away, or someone else is going to own these tests, so we don't have to worry about it. But that's not what we wanted to happen. The second area where we made changes was our process. We went from requirement sessions to collaboration sessions, where we had to incorporate behavior-driven development. We want our behavior to drive the code. So we incorporated also the test-driven development and acceptance test-driven development, and then BDD. And we teach classes on this too. So our single source of truth tool is Cucumber, and we write all of our requirements in feature files, and our BSAs write the feature files in the code in our source repository and check that in with our code, and then our developers and testers automate them. So all of these things put together help us make sure that we're building the right thing for our clients. The third area that we made changes in was our technology. We had to make sure that people were testing at a lower level. So we had to make sure that we built the infrastructure and enabled teams with the right tools so that they would be successful. And as I said earlier, we're moving towards microservices. So we did a lot of API testing. And the tool we use for that is Pact, where we do contract testing. I also teach classes on that. And made sure that they did performance testing and the security testing as well. So TCLE as a whole does a lot for the community. We want to make sure, again, I keep saying this, that they're very successful. So we do dojos, we do training, we have office hours where they can contact us directly, and we have brown bags, forums. We have a lot of IT divisions, right? So we had practitioners and champions at every division helping teams whenever they needed it. One of the biggest areas that we help with is coaching. At the time when we first started, it was important that we had long-term coaching engagements. So to give you an example of that, I have a case study. So let's say this team, Big Bucks, they usually come to us with a particular problem. They're an existing legacy application with a new UI feature in Angular JS, and they're currently using Selenium, but they want to switch over to Protractor. So that sounds pretty good to the developers and technical people in the room. If you're writing something in AngularJS, maybe you want to use Protractor because it's in the same language. They play nicely together. But they're a legacy team, right? So the whole team comes to us with this particular problem. And then we also have our BSA, our product owners, and everybody else in the room, like as a team now, saying, well, are we even shifting left? Are we even doing what we should be doing? Are we on track? How do we even know? Well, that's a good question, and that's kind of the question that should be asked. So in order to answer that question, we look at a bigger picture. We consider some additional context. You have automation flakiness. Is that why you're trying to switch from Selenium to Protractor? Right? So you just feel like, oh, Selenium is awful. We're just going to move to Protractor. That'll be better. Okay, well, maybe that's not your solution. They were also doing handoffs still. They had maybe an automation engineer on their team, but they weren't working with the developer. They were just given the task to do all the automation. And now they're the ones that are saying, well, we don't like Selenium, we want to switch to Protractor. It may not be the best option for you. And actually, in this case also, we were using Jenkins, and Protractor in our environment didn't run on Jenkins. We were building Protractor to run in Bamboo instead. Other areas that we look at is the product dynamics. So from your application, which part of your application do you own? What are you touching? Are you trying to test everything from the UI all the way down to external dependencies and your database and back? Why? When you're not owning that part of your application. We also look at their testing dynamics. So they have end-to-end tests, but 50% of their end-to-end tests are failing. They have no integration tests, and they do have some unit, but their regression suite takes 4 weeks, and they have 90 defects. And you're worried about a tool? Why? Exactly. So we help them figure this out, and we give them the shift left strategy. So based on the desired outcomes of our whole organization, our whole IT organization, I asked this team, which of these 4 things do you want to focus on? So they say, okay, we want to decrease our testing cycle time by 20%, and we want to increase our software quality by 20%. Okay, that sounds doable. Sounds like if you work on those 2, then the other 2 will also work out. So don't forget, we have to measure that. What is your current state? Where are you right now? Let's track that. If you have 4-week sprints or 2 or 3 week sprints, every sprint, how are you making progress in these areas? The tool that we used was Sonar to collect this data. So they would keep up with their sonar metrics every sprint. And as a team, you get together and you go over your progress. The next one is identify your system under test. So we went over that, and I told them, you only own your UI and your mid-tier, and actually over the sprints, you're only making changes in the mid-tier. Your tester is, your developer who is developing, making these changes in the mid-tier is testing at a lower level. What you guys need is more integration tests. Test what you're touching. If you're a legacy app and you're afraid to touch it, you're afraid to make changes, then build that also into your plan. Say, well, we need to refactor. Well, how long do impact analysis on your code? How long would it take to refactor? Break that out into smaller stories. So we gave them these kind of advice. Also, are you following design principles, your solid principles, object-oriented design, so that you can actually feel comfortable touching your code and testing your code? Automation is an investment. We don't tell them to automate everything. You can't automate everything. So if the cost is low and the risk is high, those are the things that you can focus on automating. Things that your business care about, that you need to run every day, all day, as often as possible. But if you have something that cost is high and your risk is low, don't focus on those areas. Maybe leave them as a manual test. So for example, we have multi-day testing. We have tests that only run once a year. Things that are very complex, lots of business logic. Maybe it's just best to leave it as a manual test. Maintenance is important. Tools, the tool that you choose has a lot of maintenance. Who's going to own that tool? Who's going to change the versions of that tool when new versions roll out? If you do an open source tool, is anyone taking in the changes for that open source tool? Those are things you need to think about. The people that you have on your team maintaining the tool, do they actually have the skill sets to maintain the tool? When you build your framework in your application, are you building it just for yourself, or are you building it for someone else to actually add to it? Because when we talk about shift left, you're slowing down so that you can build your framework, but once it's built, it should also follow the same design principles as your code. It should follow solid principles in your object-oriented design so that when the next person comes around to add to your framework, they're not spending the same amount of time that you spent to build it. They should just be adding on to it. So these are things that you should think about. Take classes or training on the tool before you bring it in-house. Test design and techniques. So when we first rolled out, we started off with the testing pyramid. Everybody wanted the 7-20-10. They thought it would be perfect. They just wanted 7-20-10. But that's not what we wanted either, because then if they had little lower number in end-to-end tests, people were actually creating more end-to-end tests so that they could have 10%. Missed the whole point of the pyramid. The point of the pyramid was just so that you can have lower level testing because it's faster. It's not relying on data. We wanted them to create integration tests, again, because it's faster. It's not relying on data. If you don't have 10% end-to-end, great. Don't create more. Then some people thought that manual test was going away. No, that was also not the point. Then everyone got very excited, and the business wanted to see all the tests. They wanted to see everything. And we were like, you're not going to see everything. For the last, 20 years, you didn't see all the tests before, and now you care extra about the test. But so some tests are business-facing, and some are still technical. It's just about having the transparency on your team, letting your non-technical people know that you do have tests. Worked with a legacy team, a third-party app team, and they had tests in a third-party application, right, in their proprietary language. It's okay. That is your automation. If that's your suite, that's your suite. All those tests matter. Then explain to the entire team that there's also non-functional tests. You have performance testing and usability and security. So all of these tests is important, and we wanted the team to understand and build them into their process earlier on in their development process instead of waiting into the very end. And if you build security performance into your pipeline, you can see if you're affecting these areas while you're doing your development instead of waiting until later. And then again, your development process, this is the team working together, you're still doing handoffs. Everybody on the team should know exactly where you are in the process. and our shift left tools for continuous integration and continuous delivery. So we have a lot of tools that we use. They're all not even listed here in planning, development, testing, and release. Some are licensed, some are they're built in-house as well, like some are homegrown tools. So we use a lot of different things throughout our process. Okay. So we don't leave the team there. Can't leave you with just, oh, here's your strategy, good luck. But we do help them. When we first start, we might work with them for every week, and then the next month, maybe every other week, maybe every 3 weeks. But then we come back and look at this team 6 months later. So based on the outcomes that they wanted to work on, they wanted to increase their software quality by 20%, reduce their testing cycle time by 20%. They developed this action plan where they did team collaboration, they worked on their defects and technical debt, they did code pair programming so that they could share knowledge and share their coding techniques. They created lower level tests and worked on their end-to-end tests to make sure they were stable and reliable. And then they had a good understanding of their pipeline so they knew which tool to choose. And then these were their shift left results. They were able to decrease their end-to-end tests, and now that they're all passing, they also have integration tests, and their manual test was decreased by 21%. Production defects also decreased, and their testing cycle time went from 4 weeks to 3 weeks. Okay. So by this team following the shift left strategy, they were actually able to make changes in their outcome over time. So if you still haven't gotten it, all the reasons why you should practice shift left. It's very beneficial to your teams and to your organization as a whole that you actually follow this shift left strategy. It may not be to the T, hopefully that you were able to pull out something that you could apply either to your team or your organization as a whole, but it gives your team the flexibility to make changes and add new features to your application. You also have faster cycle time, higher quality, and less defects. I think that's what we're all striving for when you're at your organization. Okay. So where are we now? TCOE has moved on, and because now that all of these skill sets are instilled in each team, and we've been on this journey for a couple years now, we've been migrated back to our build teams and our delivery teams. So the regression team has now moved on to the actual team so that they could be more hands-on with the team, and then TCOE itself has moved on with the development and deployment teams. So this is our business value at startup speed model and fast IT framework. So you'll see here continuous delivery is mixed with our next gen applications, and we're basically integrated with them because now it's basically, we need to be closer to the application and the deployment process. Overall, defects have decreased from thousands to hundreds. So that's great. I didn't say they disappeared. We still have them, it's just not as much, and we're moving in the right direction. We're more outcome focused as an organization, and therefore teams are caring more about the why and the what instead of the how. We have, like I mentioned earlier, 283 teams, and of those teams, we call them NGA, Next Gen Applications, 170 teams. So they are the ones that are actually deploying twice a month. So in that, I hope that you were able to get something out of this and that you can take some of these items back to your teams and your company to help with your continuous delivery process. Thank you, and if you have any questions, please reach out.
Questions, anybody?
Hi,
Hi, thank you for your talk. You mentioned training in dojos. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit more, how you do it, how often, etc.
Yeah, so on our team, it was very like open to the people on the team, whoever wanted to learn something new and develop something new, and then we would train it. So for example, I'll take myself as an example. I worked very closely on Cucumber, and that was our tool for collaboration and for integration testing. So I learned the tool, developed the best practices for it. Then we created brown bags, which is just an hour meetings, online meetings for the whole organization. And then from there, it developed into a 2-day training for basic Cucumber, and then a 2-day advanced Cucumber training. So now it's completely 4 days, and I have been teaching that. So it kind of just developed. So we also have training, like I said, on contract testing and PAC, that's 2 days. We did Cucumber JS for 2 days, or they call it more like a dojo. If it's hands-on, like a training, like basically like examples and then exercises during it. So we just created trainings based off of what either new tool we brought in or best practices or difficult areas that the organization had.
Hi.
Hello.
If you were just talking to a team responsible for the delivery and responsible for the end-to-end testing, and a team that is separate from the development team and from the integration team, what kind of advice would you give to start implementing shift left from the delivery side to the beginning?
Do you plan on staying separate, or are you merging with the team eventually?
It depends.
Okay. Because like I said, well, our first steps were merging the team together. It started with the reorg change of the management to pull people together. Then it led into actually relocating teams together. Then it changed into the team is doing testing at the same stage as the development. Because maybe in your case, you are also supporting multiple project teams, not just one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the shift left part comes in with testing and developing at the same time. I think that's even the foundation is TDD, which is the test-driven development. You can't write tests. You write the test the same time as you're writing the code. So they go together.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, thank you for your talk.
Where are we?
Have you looked at,
I don't see you.
I'm over here.
Oh, hello.
Have you looked at the cost of any savings in infrastructure, things like infrastructure as code with regard to the adoption of shift left and improvements to, basic things like, elimination of jump servers and bastion hosts and things like that in your cloud consumption? I saw a lot of software quality improvement. It usually translates to millions of dollars, but do you have any actual dollar figures in terms of the benefits?
Not there, and not in the area of the infrastructure, because where we were at first, in all my experience, we were separated from that team that focused on that. It also took us, in general, to see the savings in cost, probably about 4 years, 3 or 4 years into it. There is savings in cost, but I do not have the figures with me. Any questions?
Hi. I noticed on one of your slides you also mentioned the shift right. This talk obviously is about shift left strategy, but do you have any concrete examples that you also mentioned the shift right? Was it a specific situation that you needed it, or?
It's about testing in our prod environment, so that's why I just listed smoke test as an example. And that's, again, still areas that we're still looking into how to do more of, but it's just testing more in the prod environment. Okay. All right, well, thank you again for having me, and please reach out if you have any more questions.